Ugly.
Five.
Who are the best and who are the worst NFL teams? It's Mike Gill's Fine Five and Ugly Five on 97.3 ESPN FM, South Jersey's football station.
All right, time for the Fine Five and the Ugly Five here on the Sports Bash 97.3 ESPN. These are my five best, five worst. Josh has his. We had a lot of discrepancies last week. Very interested to see where they go this week. I had a really, really tough time putting my Fine Five together. My Ugly Five, not so much. I had a tough time putting the Fine Five together. We'll get that rolling for you here on the Sports Bash 97.3 ESPN. This week's Fine Five and Ugly Five for you. Five best, five worst NFL teams. You don't want to be on the ugly list. You do want to be on the fine list. I had a real hard time with the fines. I got to be honest. My fines are really bizarre based on some of the games this past week. And I'll explain them for you. And we'll get Josh's list as well for this week's Fine Five, Ugly Five, because, you know, we had a couple discrepancies last week on the Fine Five and the Ugly Five. So let's get to them. Here they are, this week's Fine Five and Ugly Five. Starting with the Ugly Fives, my fifth worst team, Josh. We saw them win a game. We saw them get a shutout. But that doesn't mean I don't think San Francisco is still one of the worst five teams in football. They're not as bad as I thought they were last week, but they're still in the Ugly Five at number 5.
My number 5 team is not the 49ers. It's actually the Titans. I'm bringing the Titans into the fifth slot.
You defended that team like crazy last week.
And now I have to show that I was wrong. And they were so bad that I have to stick them at number 5.
Number 4 on my list. Good news for Eagles fans. I got the Bears at number 4. I thought the Bears looked lifeless. I thought the Bears just looked disinterested. And I think the Bears are defensively very poor.
The Bears are on my list, but they're not at 4. My number 4 is your number 5, the 49ers. The only reason I don't have them at any worse is because they actually did win. And I kind of have to give them at least a little credit for not being totally horrible. That was one of the games I got wrong this weekend, Mike. So I got to give them a little credit and move them down the ugly list.
Who was that?
49ers.
Okay, that's what I thought you said. Just making sure. All right, number 3 for me, Tennessee. As you said, they were pretty bad last week. In fact, they were on my list last week in the Ugly 5 department. Where did I have them? Where's my Ugly 5 from last week?
They were on your Ugly 5.
I know. I'm just trying to see where they went. Oh, here they are. They were the second worst team in the league. They moved to the third worst team. They lost. They looked bad, but yet they moved up the list.
I think you're more disgusted with other teams then.
That's true.
My number 3 team is the Bears. The Bears are so bad, and it's not just that they're bad. I feel like that team is so ill put together, and it's ironic because I had the Bears at 3 last week, Mike. So they're 3 for me this week.
All right. Number 2, L.A. They were horrible. We got to see it on Monday Night Football. They're number 2 because I do think their defense is pretty good. I think their defense will keep them in some games this year. Obviously, when you play one bad game and you look that horrible, it's going to stand out. But I'm pumping the brakes a little bit that they have a good defense. We knew that coming. They won 7 games last year. So I'll go with them number 2.
Yeah, I can't do that. No, the Rams are not my number 2. The Browns are my number 2 because the Browns actually scored. The Browns scored points. The Rams' offense is so bad, it has put football back 20 years. They can't even put points on the board.
Against the Chip Kelly defense.
Exactly.
Number 1, Cleveland. That's a bad roster. They have no redeeming qualities on either side of the ball. And now they're going to a backup quarterback, which probably is better. McCown probably gives them a better shot. But, I mean, they just don't have any talent on that team. It's nothing new from them. We knew they were going to be it. They were number 1 last week for me, too.
Numero uno for me is the Rams. That is one of the worst football performances I've ever seen in my life.
Teams that slipped out for me, just Detroit. The other teams, all the same. The only new team in my list was L.A.
My new team is the Titans, and the team that's no longer there is the Chargers.
All right, these are the Fine Five. I really had a hard time putting my Fine Five together. I don't think there was 5 standout teams. Some of the standout teams that I would say lost this week. Number 5, Pittsburgh. I moved them in. They were not on my list last week. They're number 5. Very impressive offensively. I got to see more of their defense. I thought Washington was just inept on offense. I don't know if that's because Pittsburgh's defense was really good or Washington's offense isn't very good.
I have the Panthers at 5, actually. I was a little disappointed in their loss. I felt they could have done a little bit more against the Broncos, considering it was a unexperienced quarterback under center for them. So I got them at 5.
Cincinnati, for me, moves from 5 to 4. They went on the road. They win on the road against a pretty good Jets team. That team won 10 games last year and got better. So I was impressed by the fact that Cincinnati went on the road and won. There's one other team on this list that was able to do that, and they're very good. I have Cincinnati moving from 4 to 5, or from 5 to 4.
My number 4 team is the Cardinals. They dropped from 1 to 4. I didn't like what I saw, Mike. It frustrated me. I felt this is the deepest, most talented team in the NFL, and as a team, they did not execute. Individual players had great games, but as a team, they did not play well.
I have Arizona from 1 to 3. Here's a team that lost, but still in my Fine 5. Very disappointed in them, but I still think they're one of the best teams in the league. And it's interesting because there's some other teams that I'm sure we'll get into a conversation with when you hear my next team. But I got Arizona moving from 1 to 3. I don't think a loss to New England drops you all that far. Now, a loss to New England at home when Jimmy Garoppolo and Gronk are out, you might say, well, what are you thinking? I still think at the end of the year, Arizona's going to be in this Fine 5 for virtually every week.
My number 3 team actually is the Packers. Welcome to my Fine 5. They were not on my list last week. I like the fact they went on the road, won, and they did it in a way that showed you that they can play on both sides of the ball.
Number 2, I think this is going to be the controversial one. I got Carolina at number 2. And you might say, well, they lost, and the team that beat them is not even on your list. I think if Carolina and Denver play, first off, if they make the kick, they win the game. Okay? To go to Denver to start the year, it's not an easy place to play anyway against the defending Super Bowl champions. They went toe-to-toe. Should they have won that game? Absolutely. I still think Carolina, long-term, is a better team than Denver is. So I got Carolina still number 2 in my Fine 5. They were number 2 last week. I'm not moving them based on a Thursday night opener. So I'm going to stick with Carolina at number 2. And Denver, who beat them, is not on my list at all.
My number 2 is actually my number 3 from last week, the Steelers. We knew they had Ben Roethlisberger. We knew they had Antonio Brown. But that defense played above my expectations.
You're buying the defense.
I'm buying the fact that they can play defense. Last year they couldn't play defense. Now they can, so they moved to 2 for me.
All right, my number 1 team is New England.
Same.
For them to go on the road against Arizona. Look, if they go on the road and beat Cleveland, that's different. They went on the road and beat Arizona.
On Sunday Night Football, when all the lights are on you, with Jimmy Garoppolo.
No Gronk. I don't know how they do it, man.
Oh, also no Rob Ninkovich either.
Don't know how they do it. So out this week for me, Kansas City, who won, and everybody else is in. The only new team in for me is Pittsburgh.
My team out is the Seahawks. I was disappointed in their performance on Sunday, although they have done performances like that before and been just fine as the season progressed. But I think that performance showed you that they got some things to work on.
Seattle.
Yeah.
I'm you know me, I've been a big Russell Wilson fan.
Me too.
And the ankle problem, that could be a problem. I don't think their defense is, by any stretch of the imagination, bad or just, they're just not the same.
They just didn't execute at the level I expected from them.
That's the Fine 5 and the Ugly 5 here on the Sports Bash 97.3 ESPN. Agree or disagree with any of our picks? Send us a text message to the Dubell Lumber text board, 609-403-0973.